Have you ever stopped to think about what it really costs to be a visionary? We love to celebrate pioneers after they're proven right, but history tells a much darker story. It shows that being the first one through the wall, well, it often comes with a terrible price. So let's dive into what I'm calling the curse of being first. It's this crazy, frustrating paradox, isn't it? The very ideas that push humanity forward, the ones that literally save lives, create incredible new technologies, or shape our entire culture, so often get met with scorn, with ridicule, with just outright hostility. So to really get why, we've got to dig into the stories of those who dared to step up first. First up, we're going to meet a doctor who figured out a dead simple way to stop women from dying during childbirth. And his reward? His peers called him crazy and had him committed to an asylum. Then there's the story of a mathematical genius, a man who helped win a world war, only to be systematically destroyed by the very country he helped save, all because of who he chose to love. And we'll uncover the incredible story of a Hollywood superstar whose brilliant invention, and I'm talking about the foundation for technology you're probably using right now, was completely ignored because nobody could see past her famous face. All right, so our first stop on this journey is a big one. It's the wall that pretty much every great idea runs into: orthodoxy. This is the world of the established experts, right? The gatekeepers of the way things are done. And as you can imagine, they often have the most to lose when some new disruptive idea threatens to shake things up. And you see this pattern repeat itself over and over in totally different fields. Take Ignaz Semmelweis in the 1840s. He had this wild idea that doctors were carrying cadaverous particles from dead bodies into delivery rooms and killing new mothers. Then, decades later, a meteorologist named Alfred Wegener proposed that entire continents were just drifting around. In both cases, the establishment wasn't just skeptical, they were deeply offended. The doctors couldn't stomach the idea that they, the healers, were the source of death. And the geologists just scoffed. How dare an outsider, a weatherman of all people, try to rewrite their entire field? And here's the absolute tragedy of it all. Semmelweis had the receipts. This wasn't just some wild guess. He had cold, hard data. After he made hand-washing mandatory in his clinic, the results were just staggering. The death rate for new mothers plunged from a horrifying 16% all the way down to less than 2%. The numbers were right there, plain as day. Lives were being saved. But in the end, it was never about the evidence, was it? It was about ego and identity. See, germ theory hadn't been invented yet, so his idea just sounded like nonsense to them. Or worse, it sounded like an accusation. His colleagues simply could not accept the thought that their own hands, their instruments of healing, were actually killing people. They had to reject his truth because that truth was just too unbearable to face. Okay, so sometimes the wall isn't a small group of experts. Sometimes the obstacle is, well, it's everyone. It's society itself. An idea can be completely brilliant, but if the culture just isn't ready to hear it, it's dead on arrival. I mean, just look at one of the greatest American novels ever written, Moby Dick. Today, it's required reading, but back in 1851, it was a total bomb. It baffled the critics, it didn't sell, and the book was completely out of print by the time Herman Melville died 40 years later, basically a forgotten man. It took another 30 years after his death, that's 70 years in total, for a new generation to come along and finally recognize its genius. Society literally had to catch up to the book. And the reviews from the time, wow, they are stunning to read today. The critics just had no idea what to make of it. They called it a confusing mess, a crazy sort of affair. They were expecting a simple sea adventure, and what they got from Melville was this dense, philosophical epic about obsession and God and the universe. The book wasn't wrong, the timing was. But, some truths are more than just inconvenient. They're seen as dangerous. For Alan Turing, the groundbreaking computer scientist and war hero who cracked Germany's Enigma code, the problem wasn't his ideas. The problem, for the society he lived in, was his very existence as a gay man. Just try to imagine the impossible trap he was in. After being convicted in 1952, what were his options? Flee the country? Nope. The U.S. was right in the middle of its own anti-gay purge. Most of the Western world had similar laws. Okay, so fight back publicly? There were no organized rights groups, no support system. It would have been total career and social suicide. Well, what about just staying silent? His conviction and the horrific punishment of chemical castration made that completely impossible. The system didn't just fail him, it boxed him in, leaving him absolutely no way out. And that brings us to our third barrier, and it's a really ugly one. Just raw, simple prejudice. This is what happens when a person's genius is rendered completely invisible because society can't look past their gender, their race, or in this next case, their stunning beauty. This was the label that defined actress Hedy Lamarr, the most beautiful woman in the world. It was her brand, it was her claim to fame, and ultimately it was her prison. Because while she was a huge Hollywood star, she was also a brilliant, self-taught inventor, obsessed with engineering and technology. But the world only wanted to see the movie star. You know, what Hedy experienced is so common that it actually has a name, the Matilda effect. It's this recognized pattern where the scientific contributions of women are just systematically ignored or worse, credited to their male colleagues. She was a textbook case. Her mind was brilliant, but to the world, it was just an afterthought. So get this. During World War II, she desperately wanted to help the Allies. So she co-invented and patented a secret communication system, a revolutionary way to guide torpedoes that couldn't be jammed by the enemy. She brings this brilliant idea to the US Navy, and they basically patted her on the head. Instead of using her patent, they asked her to use her fame to sell war bonds by selling kisses. The absurdity is it's staggering. But here's the twist in all these stories. While the pioneers themselves often suffer, great ideas, they have a way of surviving. History might take its sweet time, but it usually, eventually bends toward the truth. So let's look at how these rejected figures finally got their vindication. Now, that vindication often came way too late for the people involved. Semmelweis's hand-washing theory was proven completely right by Louis Pasteur's work on germs, but that was years after his tragic death. Alfred Wegener's wacky idea of continental drift? Yeah, we now call that the theory of plate tectonics. And of course, Moby Dick was pulled from the dustbin of history to become a pillar of world literature. And what about Hedy Lamarr? Well, her invention was as elegant as it was ingenious. She teamed up with a composer, and they based their system on a player piano. The idea was to have the radio signal constantly hop between 88 different frequencies, the same as the 88 keys on a piano, making it impossible for anyone to listen in or jam the signal. It was pure genius. And this isn't just some quirky piece of trivia. That very patent, the one the military ignored in the 1940s, became the foundational concept for what we now call frequency hopping spread spectrum technology. It is the core technology that makes secure Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth possible. So, every time you connect your headphones to your phone, you're using a direct descendant of Hedy Lamarr's crazy idea. And that leaves us with one last, really unsettling question. You know, it's easy to look back at the stories of Semmelweis, Turing, Lamarr, and Melville, and judge the people of the past. It's so easy for us to see their blindness. But are we really any different? What revolutionary idea, what inconvenient truth, or what overlooked genius is staring us right in the face today that we're all dismissing out of arrogance or prejudice or maybe just plain fear? Whose vindication will future generations be talking about?